The text came at 6:42 p.m. Mom, don't forget to finish the leftovers. I stood at the sink, hands still in soapy water. The smell of reheated rice and overcooked chicken clung to the air what I'd made for lunch. Julian had said they'd be home late. Meetings, errands, nothing special. I hadn't asked questions. But the message made me pause. I dried my hands, reached for my phone again, and opened the location-sharing app Leo had helped me install. There they were, at Shoreline Grill. The same place Julian took me for my birthday 2 years ago when Clara was still pretending to like me. I zoomed in. The name of the restaurant glowed above a pin dropped neatly along the boardwalk. I stared at it, then at the last photo Clara had sent in the family group chat an hour earlier. Leo in a button-up shirt, grinning between her parents. They weren't just eating out. They were celebrating. Without me. I typed a response. Okay, just that. Then I folded the towel over the faucet, pulled off my apron, and walked to the guest room. My bag was still half packed from last weekend's visit to Deb's. I started filling it quietly. Pajamas, prescription bottles, my house slippers. The drawer stuck when I pulled it too hard. I paused, listening for the silence in the kitchen. No one to hear it now. They had taken Leo my seat at the table, and tonight, even the truth. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around. Framed photos, stacked books, the clock Marshall had rewired after it stopped ticking. All still here, all staying. I didn't need them, not anymore. I pulled out a manila envelope and started sorting the documents I had meant to file months ago. The deed. The tax letters. My bank statements. I hesitated, then added one sheet of lined paper on top. Then I rose, zipped the bag, and placed the envelope on the top shelf of the fridge next to the container of untouched leftovers. I moved into the guest house 3 years ago, just after Marshall passed. Julian said it would help them both. Clara was returning to work, and they didn't want to send Leo to daycare. You'd be close, but still have your own space, he said, smiling in that way he used to when he was still my boy. At first, it felt like a purpose. I cooked meals, folded tiny socks, picked Leo up from school on rainy days. I stayed quiet when Clara rearranged the kitchen I had just organized. I bit my tongue when they installed cameras in every room but mine. I told myself it was temporary, that families evolve. I started paying part of the utilities when their bills got high. I didn't say anything when Julian's name replaced mine on some of the mail. I figured it was easier that way. But things shifted. First it was Clara's voice, laced with something cooler clipped at the edges. Then came the locked door on Saturday mornings, when they didn't want to be disturbed. Leo stopped running to me first, when he scraped a knee. Mom says you make too big a deal, he told me once. Eyes wide with confusion, I began to measure my presence, how loud my footsteps were at night, how long I kept the kettle on, whether my mug was left in the sink too long. I became smaller by habit, and then by necessity. There were group dinners where I wasn't asked to join, just told after. Birthdays, where I became the one taking photos, instead of appearing in them. I told myself it was natural, that I had done my part. But tonight, stripped away whatever cushion I had left, they didn't just forget me. They planned around me, and they expected me to be grateful for the crumbs they left behind. I sat in the dark guest house and thought about the chair I used to sit in before they gave it away. I wasn't going to look, but I did. Clara had posted the photo to her story, probably forgetting I could still see it. Julian sat at the head of the table, smiling, like the perfect husband, holding a glass of wine. Her parents sat on either side, beaming full plates in front of them. Leo looked small in his button-up shirt tucked between them, his tie slightly crooked. A woman had to take the picture. It was Clara's style, off-center, natural, like she'd caught a perfect moment in motion. There was laughter frozen in Julian's mouth, a candle flickering low crumbs on a white plate near the edge. I tapped, to pause it. Then I zoomed in. 6 seats. 3 on each side. 1 chair at the end. The same chair I used to sit in when Leo was still in a booster seat and I'd cut his food before Clara could remind me to let him try himself. That chair had been mine on birthdays. Thanksgivings, Tuesday night, pasta dinners, when everyone was too tired to cook. I'd sit with Leo in my lap, wiping his face with a napkin, while Julian and Clara talked work. Now it belonged to Clara's father. He was leaning back one arm over the chair's edge, like it had never belonged to anyone else. No high chair next to him, no soft voice reading aloud over dessert. I stared at that chair for longer than I should have. I imagined the sound it made when he pulled it out, the ease with which he sat. I closed the app. The room felt colder. Then I picked up the envelope from the fridge and slid it into my bag. I sat at the edge of the bed, the phone still glowing faintly on the nightstand, and thought of the years that had led me here. When Julian and Clara bought this house, they couldn't afford the down payment. Julian had sounded so embarrassed when he called me. Just until the next bonus comes through, Mom, he'd said. I sold my car. That same week. The dealership clerk had tried to talk me out of it, said an old sedan like that wouldn't bring much. It didn't. But it was enough. A few months later, Clara cracked a tooth and the insurance wouldn't cover the surgery. I paid that too quietly so Julian wouldn't feel the strain. She thanked me with a bouquet and a text that said, "You really saved us." I kept the card longer than I'd like to admit, and when Marshall's death left me with a small condo and too much silence, Julian's voice had been gentle over the phone. "You'll always have space here." I believed him. I packed away 28 years of a shared life into 15 boxes, sold the rest, and moved into their backyard. At first I felt needed again. Leo's laughter filled the days, and I learned to cook the way Clara liked: less salt, more oil. They said I made things easier. Maybe I did, but little by little my help became background noise. I never reminded them of what I gave. I didn't want to sound like a ledger, but the truth was written everywhere in the furniture, the mortgage papers, the credit card statements. I had built their comfort one quiet decision at a time. Tonight, seeing that photo, it all rearranged itself. I wasn't the foundation anymore, just a fixture no one noticed until it was gone. I reached for my purse, tucked the envelope deeper inside, and zipped it shut. The house would be quiet when they came home. Too quiet to ignore. I didn't take much. I knew better than to make noise on my way out. The photo albums went first, just 2, both worn at the edges. One with Leo's baby pictures, the other with Marshall's handwriting still scrawled on the back of an old Christmas photo. I slid them into the side of my suitcase, careful not to fold the corners. Then the scarf Leo had given me last winter, blue with little white dots. He'd picked it out himself. I remembered how proud he was handing it over, saying, "I know you like soft things." 3 books followed hardcovers I never lent out, even when Clara said her mother needed something for the plane. I didn't write my name in them. I never needed to. They were mine. The rest I left behind. The slippers by the door. The coat I always wore to pick Leo up from school. The little ceramic dish on the dresser that used to hold Marshall's cufflinks. I found an old box in the closet and filled it with printed receipts, scribbled bank transfers, emails I'd printed out months ago and never threw away. At the very top, I placed the envelope cream paper sealed neatly, the handwriting slow and deliberate. To Julian and Clara. Inside a copy of the house deed, still in my name. A spreadsheet I'd made one night just to remind myself what I'd contributed: property taxes, repairs, grocery runs, Leo's daycare fees the first year, and a note. Only 1 sentence. "Thank you for the space. I won't be needing it anymore." I placed the box squarely in the middle of the kitchen island. Not hidden, not dramatic, just visible enough. Then I turned off the lights, wheeled my suitcase to the front door, and stepped out into the quiet street. Julian first brought it up not long after I moved in. He waited until Leo had gone to bed and Clara was in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. We were sitting in the living room, the quiet kind of tense between us. He said it casually, like he was suggesting a change of light bulbs. It'd be easier if the house were just in our name. Tax stuff. Long-term things. I smiled and said, "Let's wait until Leo starts school." He nodded, didn't press. And after that, he never asked again. But they acted like I had. Like something had been signed and sealed and pushed into a drawer. They remodeled the kitchen, swapped out fixtures, moved furniture like they owned it. I didn't argue. I told myself I was just the guest, the helper, the extra hands. But the truth was always sitting in a folder in my dresser drawer. The deed was in my name. Still is. That night after I left the envelope behind, I drove with the radio off. The roads were nearly empty. When I pulled up outside Deb's place, she was already waiting on the porch, in slippers and an oversized cardigan. She didn't say a word as I stepped out. Just opened her arms and let me fall into them. We didn't speak until I was sitting at her kitchen table, both hands wrapped around a mug of tea she'd made without asking. She waited while I told her everything about the text, the dinner, the chair, the letter. When I finished, she slid a slip of paper across the table. A name and a number. "He's fair, quick, and quiet," she said. "You won't need much, just proof. And you've got that." I looked down at the number. It felt strange, realizing how simple it was. After all the years of folding myself small, all I needed to do was say the truth out loud. "They thought it was theirs," I murmured. "They didn't even think Deb said." "That's the problem." I nodded and pulled my phone from my bag. I was ready to make the call. The call came the next morning while I was at Deb's, still in my robe. Clara's name flashed across the screen, but when I answered, it wasn't her voice. "Grandma, why did you leave your slippers?" I froze, gripping the phone. His little voice cracked, like the sound of a glass slipping from the counter, sharp, sudden, helpless. "Sweetheart," I said softly. "I didn't mean to. You keep them for me, all right." "Okay," he whispered. Then after a pause, Mom said, "You're taking a break." "Are you mad at us?" I wanted to tell him the truth, but the truth didn't belong to a child. "No, love. I just needed to rest for a bit." He didn't answer right away. I heard muffled voices. Then the line went dead. That afternoon, I couldn't stand it. I called the school and asked if I could drop off something for Leo. The secretary didn't question it. She still remembered me from the days I picked him up. When he came into the office, his backpack looked too heavy for his small shoulders. His eyes lit up when he saw me, and for a moment, everything felt right again. "I drew something for you," he said, digging through his folders until he found a crumpled sheet of paper. He unfolded it with both hands and smoothed it out on the counter. It was a drawing of a house square, simple, with a little chimney and a tree beside it. In front stood two stick figures, one tall, one small. Between them, a dog with a round belly and lopsided ears. No Clara. No Julian. "Is this your dream house?" I asked gently. He shook his head. "No," he said with a shy smile. "Yours?" I traced the edge of the paper, my throat tight. "Then I'll keep it safe," I told him. As I watched him walk back down the hall, the drawing still warm in my hands, I knew what I had to do next. It was time to make everything official. Julian called that evening. No greeting. No pause. Just, "You can't just walk out like that." I let the silence sit between us for a second longer than he expected. "I didn't walk out," I said. I stepped back. His breath caught. "What does that even mean? You left without saying anything. Clara's been crying all day. Leo's confused. You left a note like it was some kind of performance." "I left a summary," I replied. "Because that's all you seem to see of me these days." He laughed, sharp and bitter. "So, this is about a dinner, about a seat at the table." "No," I said, steady now. "It's about every time I wasn't asked, only expected. Every bill I covered without acknowledgement. Every time you use my silence as permission." He didn't respond. "I've spoken with a real estate agent." I continued. 30 days from now, the house goes on the market. I've given you time. Use it how you like." "You can't do that." "I can," I said. "And I am. The deed's still in my name, Julian. You knew that once. You forgot." His voice dropped quieter. "You're serious. I should have been serious years ago." I heard Clara in the background asking what was happening. Julian didn't answer her. "What about Leo?" he said finally. "You'd take his home from him." "I'll never take anything from Leo," I said, and meant it. "But I won't let you keep taking from me and calling it love." He said nothing. When he finally hung up, I stared at the screen for a long time. Not sad, not angry, just done. Deb walked in with 2 cups of coffee and set one in front of me. "How'd it go?" "He heard me," I said. She nodded, no questions. We sat at her kitchen table, the sun dipping low beyond the window, and I folded Leo's drawing into the side pocket of my bag. Tomorrow, I'd meet with the agent. But tonight, I allowed myself to breathe. It was Clara who came, not Julian. She knocked softly like she wasn't sure she should even be standing there. Deb opened the door and looked to me before stepping aside. I nodded. Clara walked in with her hands clasped tightly in front of her eyes, already glistening. "I just wanted to talk," she said, voice lower than usual. I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't offer her tea, didn't ask her to sit. She stood in the middle of the kitchen, like someone waiting for a verdict. "You could have told us," she added after a beat. "I did," I said. "Plenty of times. You just thought it was convenience talking. Thought I'd always be there no matter how small the space got." Clara looked down at the floor. "Julian's a mess. So was I. For a long time." She nodded slowly. "We never meant to make you feel used. You didn't make me feel anything I said. You showed me what I already knew. I was help. Background. Good enough to hold things together, but not important enough to include." Clara wiped her cheek. "What happens now, I'll leave the furniture," I said. "What you bought stays with you. What I bought can stay too. But the land, the house, that's mine. 30 days. Her lips parted like she might argue, then closed again. "We didn't think you'd ever," she started. "No," I said. "You didn't." She looked at me one last time, then turned to go. No hug? No plea? Just the quiet creak of the door closing behind her. I sat back down at the table, folded my hands, and stared out the window. It had started raining light steady. Nothing like a storm, just a soft reminder that things move forward whether we're ready or not. Deb walked in, holding an envelope from the realtor. She handed it to me without a word. 30 days. Then the listing would go live. I opened it, read the details, and smiled to myself. It was time to find my own address. The apartment is small, but it holds what I need. A window that catches the morning light. A second-hand armchair with just the right amount of give. Shelves for my books. A kitchen with space for my kettle. I didn't bring much. A framed photo of Marshall that rests beside the radio. A quilt Leo once spilled juice on. The scarf he gave me now, hanging by the door. And a folded piece of paper tucked in the drawer of the nightstand, Julian's letter. Still sealed. Still waiting. I moved in 2 weeks after the sale closed. The agent handled the final walkthrough. I didn't go back. Whatever they found in the emptiness, they'd have to live with it on their own terms. Mine were clear. Now Leo comes on Saturdays. Clara brings him, doesn't stay. I meet him in the lobby and we ride the elevator up together. He always brings something: a new rock for my windowsill collection, a story he wrote in school, a snack we split over library books. We draw together, read aloud, walk to the river and count the boats that pass under the bridge. He never asks why I left. He just slips his hand into mine and tells me about the ducks. The silence here is kind. It doesn't need explaining. It holds the space that was once filled with pretending and gives it back to me. Sometimes I take long walks past the bakery, past the benches near the water. People nod. I nod back. I'm not someone's mother here, not someone's helper. Just a woman with time and her own set of keys. The tea boils over sometimes, and I laugh. I leave the dishes in the sink now and wash them when I feel like it. The clock ticks softly in the background, and I let it. The apartment doesn't ask for anything from me. And for the first time in a long while, I don't feel like I owe anything to anyone.